Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can help us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Audible, CastBox, Player FM, wherever you find your favorite shows. Two amazing authors on the show today. First up, TJ Scripps will be here to celebrate Glow in the Dark, A Streak of Light, her debut middle grade sci-fi. And later in the show, Bobbie Pyron will be here to celebrate her middle grade novel, Octopus Moon. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Marie Nichols was recently on my Connecticut Book Festival's podcast, and what a delightful woman. One of the things she said really struck home with me. She said, parents nurture with care, siblings are taught to share, but grandparents embrace the dares. We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest is a colorful, fun-filled book where this grandmother dares to embark on a wild journey with her grandson into the dinosaur forest. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on bookshop.org. You and your kids and you and your grandkids are going to love this book. It's We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Hey families, would you like to share a miracle with your kids? At the Wolf Conservation Center, hope was fading. The endangered Mexican wolves dreamed of a pup, but none had come. Until one tiny miracle changed everything. Meet Trumpet, a real-life wolf pup whose incredible birth brought joy, hope, and a lesson in conservation. Trumpet the Miracle Wolf, written by Leocadia George, is a heartwarming true story that will inspire your whole family. Teach your kids the power of hope, love, and protecting endangered species. Get your copy today and join the wild adventure. Join us right now from the beautiful city of Austin in Texas. Our guest is here to celebrate her debut middle grade sci-fi fantasy. It's called Glow in the Dark, A Streak of Light. Please welcome to the show, TJ Scripps. Hey, TJ, how are you?
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm very good. How are you?
I'm delighted to have you on. I'm a little cold though. We've had snow and then freezing rain yesterday, and today we have 50-mile-per-hour winds.
Yeah, it's so crazy. It's freezing here in Austin as well. And being from Cape Town, where it's so warm, and having to come over here, it's the complete opposite.
Well, I'm happy that you're here now, and we're both snug in our homes.
Yes, we are. Well done. Mm-hmm.
So tell us about Glow in the Dark.
So I've been writing for about 4 years now. This is my debut novel, or it's a series, actually. Mm-hmm. So it's the first in a series of 7. And it's about a 10-year-old feisty heroine who travels to a school in the stars and learns about the signs that are sent by very special people there to help humans on Earth make our auras glow in the dark.
Ooh, that sounds like fun.
Yes, I love the setting of an academy in the stars, and I love space and astronomy, and I just thought it would be a beautiful hybrid, to have something so natural, signs all around us like sunsets and rainbows and ladybugs and streaks of light, and what those things could potentially mean, for a kid who sees them. I mean, they're all messages of hope, and I don't have kids, but I have a lot of young friends who have children, and, just walking with them in nature and seeing how they observe the environment, like a spider web or, a rainbow. I just I thought, wouldn't that be interesting to have these special signs from the universe mean something, like a surprise is coming your way, or expect magic, or you'll have tons of friends, things like that. So yeah, it's sci-fi, but it's also very much rooted in earth and in nature.
Well, as you're mentioning, these signs, rainbows and sunsets and sunrises and stars and, shooting stars. Unfortunately, there are a whole lot of kids and way too many adults that don't really see those things.
I know. And it's so sad, isn't it? I was inspired during COVID, actually, because I began to, as we all did, spend so much time alone and also outdoors. If, you could get out, and there's a great trail next to where I live downtown in Austin. It's called the Ann and Roy Hike and Bike Trail. Mm-hmm. And I used to run there during COVID, and I used to see these things. There's such a sense of wonder, and imagination that as adults we've just lost. But, COVID made everybody sort of look at things differently. And these kinds of signs and symbols, even angel numbers and recurring numbers, which is very trendy in my generation now, angel numbers like 777 or 333, and what do those mean? And I mean, I'm not 10, but I think it's quite an interesting conversation for a kid to just spark their imagination about what these things could mean, these mysterious coincidences or nature signs, and I played with that. So it took about 4 years to carve it into a superhero origin story. Mm-hmm. And I've done that. And, my main character is a redhead with green eyes. So the complete opposite of me. Yeah.
I love that. I love giving kids those signs of hope.
Yeah, for real.
Because I remember when I started performing, my very first gig that I was getting paid, and I was horrendous. I was horrible. And it was an event. There was an orchestra was playing there, and I was doing something else. But at the end of the afternoon, the orchestra leader came up. He had found a white rock.
Oh, that's lovely.
He gave it to me, and he said, "This is a sign. I saw this. It was on your stage, and I picked it up. And this is you're going to do great. This is going to be." And I'm not superstitious. I don't believe a lot of that stuff, but I still have that rock 35 years later.
For real. And I mean, that's such a great story. I suppose underpinning my whole, and the reason that I linked it to the aura in a sort of new age, style where there are different, I call an aura a happiness lamp, a multicolored happiness lamp in the story, because I'm quite into new age spirituality, and it's not even really about religion. It's just a concept, and you can accept it or not. I mean, it's just a fun fantasy idea for children to build their colors up, and I mean, being from South Africa, we're also known as the Rainbow Nation, because of all the cultures and the diversity we have. And so I just thought it was such a beautiful sort of, there's alignment there, with the idea of switching your lamp on and making your colors shine and glowing from the inside out. And essentially that's what these signs do in my book.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
How was it creating this universe with these physics, if you will?
Actually, that's a great question, because there's a ton of STEM activities to be had. Prisms play a huge role in the book, and the idea of light, of course, with a streak of light. And my Instagram is TJ Scripps Writes. And, on there, I'm starting to do a lot of kids' STEM activity videos as well, because it really encourages them to play around with light and with creating, not only the light inside of you by spotting these messages of hope from the world, but also just, in real life, that practical application, which really is very cerebral and stimulates, makes them think about the way that things work. And, you mentioned a shooting star the other day. I mean, earlier on, and I saw one the other day.
Oh, cool.
Because, there was the planetary alignment, the other day, where all the planets lined up, and I was actually in South Africa at the time, and, I've got this little app on my phone, and it's called Sky Guide, and I saw all the planets line up, and I thought, wow, isn't this wonderful for a child? This fantasy, this concept of maybe that is a sign as well. So I'm building a dictionary is what I'm getting at, of signs for children, to one day buy that alongside the book.
That's quite neat. What inspired you to become and start this journey as a children's author?
Great question. Well, I'm actually in the production space. I have a production company. I began at the Waterfront Film Studios in Cape Town, and I studied there, and then I started the business here, and then I just had a switch up during COVID, because I've always been a storyteller, and one medium is through, film and through marketing. And then I just decided that I have a nonprofit as well in Africa, called Mbeko, which means respect in Xhosa, which is Nelson Mandela's language. And I've always loved children. And so I love working with kids, and I started telling these stories, and I just realized this is as good a time as any to manifest this sort of idea that I was having working with these kids in Nelson Mandela Bay, South Africa. I just realized that there's big imaginations, and imagination transcends race, and it transcends, your financial background, and it's for rich and for poor, and these signs are accessible to everybody, and children can really learn from nature, and it's free. That's the best thing, these signs from the universe are free for everybody. And who hasn't walked with a child and had them point at, how when the sun is going down, the water shimmers on the golden sparkles on the water, and you have that beautiful horizon shot. I mean, what kind of, child hasn't pointed at that and gone, daddy, look at that, mommy, look at that, or a grasshopper. So I thought, why don't we just take this one step further and make them mean something good for kids? I haven't seen the concept done, so I decided to do it.
Well, that's how a lot of things get done.
Yeah. So just working with children, I suppose, began this journey for me, just circling back to your question of being an author and telling stories in a different way on the page.
How was it difficult for you to go from telling stories through film to telling stories with words on written words on a page?
Not really, because having grown up in Africa and in South Africa, and having, traveled to these African countries like Malawi, and, the concept of like jewels and diamonds and colors and sunsets and the ocean, of course, in Cape Town with the winelands and everything, that I've always grown up with nature being like such a hallmark, like a cornerstone for me. And so whether you're telling a story through a marketing video for a company to sell their product, or you are, writing it down on a page, I've always been very aesthetically like inclined, and visually I've always managed to, just harness the power of the environment. And whichever way you look at it, it's kind of its own prism, really. It's just a different lens. So I've always managed to find the beauty in the world around me. It's just a different way of actually accessing what's around all of us all the time. But you do need an imagination.
You do indeed. One of the things that I love is that, we encourage here at Reading with Your Kids, we encourage families to read with their kids long after they become independent readers, and read and have conversations. I'm imagining right off the bat, just getting, glow in the dark, I think would be a great way, a great kick in the butt to get families up and out of the house, and, out into nature to see those spider webs, to see the bumblebees and the grasshoppers, and to take a drive maybe out of the city, because here in Boston, I think there's like 5 stars I can see because
right, of course.
But get out into out into the country where you can look up and just go, wow, look at all those stars.
Yeah. Also, everybody's online right now, and all these kids are on their iPads, and the world's moving. I didn't grow up with any of that. I didn't grow up with Facebook or Instagram or anything. And, they were so beautiful, actually, in a way, because I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I mean, it's quite nice to throw a kid with an iPad when you want to, but at the same time, we've kind of lost that connection to nature and to the outdoors because everybody's so obsessed with the screen. And so in a way, I quite like the idea of just pausing and going outdoors and looking up. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, and you were mentioning you didn't grow up with Facebook. I didn't grow up with color TV.
Oh, really? I would never have said.
Yes. In fact, in my neighborhood, my aunt was the first person who had a color TV. And so what she did one day is she brought it downstairs. We were all sat down on the sidewalk and everybody in the neighborhood, and we watched Batman in color, and it just kind of.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Oh, that's so beautiful. Right. Exactly. So it really does stimulate the imagination. Just, I don't know. I think we're going to start seeing people wanting to take their children back into nature and have a pause from screen time, and hopefully this book can help with that and make them glow in the dark. I mean, it can be quite scary, and it can be quite a dark world. And I think the pandemic made me realize that people just need a little bit of hope, and if they can find it just walking outside and appreciating the thunderstorm and what that could mean for a child, to have this. So Ruby arrives at this academy like a Harry Potter in the stars. And, she learns about all the different departments of science, not to spoil anything, but there's all kinds of ways that we are given guidance. And whether it's through numbers or coincidences or shapes in the clouds, or nature signs, animal totems. I mean, what does it mean when you hear a coyote howl? And in Texas, you pretty much hear that every night, but doesn't that mean something? Isn't that quite sort of interesting? Isn't it quite a fantastical idea that could mean you're going to receive some pocket money soon? Or so actually coming up with these signs in this dictionary, which is called the Portfolio of Light in my book, has been a very fun journey, on its own, thinking outside the box.
I bet. Yeah. I'm always amazed. I have a hard enough time when I'm reading a fantasy or sci-fi, just keeping all the physics, all the laws of that universe in line. I can't imagine how you keep it all in your mind as you're creating it. Have you ever kind of painted yourself into a corner where you said, "Oh, wow, we can't do that," or I have to go back to the beginning and change things up?
Yeah. And you know what I do? You know what I do then, Jade? I put my iPad away and I go outside and I go for a run and I look for signs, right? To inspire me. I went to Victoria Falls, in Zimbabwe, about a year ago, and I watched this waterfall, and it had this prism, this sort of rainbow halo, right, of light. And I thought, I actually was having writer's block at that time. And, I went to this waterfall, and it was just so magnificent. And I saw this halo of light, and I thought, oh, wow, well, that's a nice sign. What could that mean? And it helped me. So it's actually been a very, what's that word? It's like its own ecosystem where I use my own concept to inspire myself. It's a symbiotic relationship. The book has helped me as much as it will help kids as well. Yeah.
What do they say? Manifest it and say it?
I think it was, well, it's a law of attraction, of course, but I think it was, I don't know, Publishers Weekly or, one of those editorial reviews I got said, this is such a, this quirky new heroine. It's brought to life, this concept through this quirky new heroine. And I really liked that. And they said it was a novel concept for middle graders, which it is quite novel. And, I know that for me, I was very proud of those editorial reviews. And like I said, I mean, my dictionary of signs can be accessed on my Instagram and on my Facebook as well. And I try to give it as like a free resource for people just in general. There's a lot of mythological meaning behind some of these signs. I do my research. I'm a bit of a semiotician in that way. I do look at the cultural significance and impact of things, you know, like you said, to keep it in the physics, to keep it in the realm of reality. I mean, there are lots of things that we see every day that do have very real mythological and cultural like roots as to what they mean. Colors, shapes, animals. Actually, it's been quite an interesting journey for me, actually learning about the world around me, you know, and then transcribing that for like a kid. Right, like in like an easy sentence, and something that's inspiring. And of course, there's also a dark, as in any book, dark beings that are fighting to keep people from glowing, to keep us from seeing the signs, to stop us, to keep us sad, and to keep our light dim. You know?
Well, I think it sounds like a great read, and you've gotten some great reviews. What about from kids? What have the kids the book said to you?
Very interesting, actually, because I just before I came back, I went on a walk with a friend of mine's 10-year-old son, Keanu, and we were walking, and he, you know, really liked the idea. And I said to him, "What do you see? What do you see around you?" I was kind of prodding him prior to him reading the book to see if this is a concept that resonated with. He's a bit autistic, you know, so I wanted to see what are the parameters there. Like, is it just for, you know, and he absolutely loved it. He looked at me and he said, "Oh, there's a spider web there and it's glinting in the sunshine." And I said, "Oh, well, you know what that means?" He said, "What does that mean?" And I said, "If you see a spider web glinting in the sunshine, it means there's some pocket money coming your way." And that was researched by me, like in my adult life, what a spider means and what the weaving of the web, you know, a lot of African mythology is behind, and folk tales as well. And he went, "Oh, really? Am I going to get some pocket money?" I said, "Well, just wait." So, you know, that's one example of kids that I have worked with who've read the book, and it's so new. I mean, it came out in August last year. So from the feedback I've had, kids seem to really like the excitement of detecting these signs around them and the messages that they could mean. And so, yeah, I know as a kid, I loved nature, and I loved sort of the magic in nature all around us, the way that, the light caught, you know, the wall, the specks of light. And I loved insects and bugs and weird and wonderful birds and what these things could mean. And, hopefully I'd like to do like a tour, you know, one day where I go to schools and libraries as well in South Africa. And I'm hoping to take the book home. Right now it's just available in the States.
Okay, great. Any thought of bringing Glow in the Dark to a screen as an animated series or feature?
100%. That would be the most amazing thing ever. And I think it would be a fantastic Marvel like superhero origin story again. Why? Why do I think that? Well, I think that because we haven't really seen a protagonist, a woman in space, like a young girl. I mean, we've seen the wizardry and the sorcery and all the magic and everything in Harry Potter. And we've seen, you know, I've had my finger on the pulse watching a lot of Netflix series for young kids, but I've never really seen this concept. And, you know, that's not a humble brag or anything. I'm just kind of amazed. This is such like an obvious thing to me because, you know, my Instagram is flooded every day with, you know, look outside, a crow. What does a raven mean? And like a magical, you know, in the most fantasy angle of the word, not religious, just fantasy. I'm seeing angel numbers making a big comeback now and animals. And I'm kind of like, why is there no superhero type Harry Potter version of a girl on screen that explores the world around her and like explores and lifts the veil, so to speak. And sci-fi, I think, needs to do a bit of a comeback. You know, I'm a big fan of Star Trek. and Star Wars. And I'm like, I actually miss it. I've been on Earth or in like Lord of the Rings, who, by the way, J.R.R. Tolkien is from South Africa as well. So long now. I've been rooted in like, magical kingdoms on Earth and under Earth, but I've never really been in the stars. And I think it's time we put a cape on and fly.
I love it. I love it. Where can we go to find out more about Glow in the Dark and find out more about you?
Okay, so my book is available on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. And of course, I have a Facebook page for the book, which is Glow in the Dark Books. My personal page is an author where you can catch more appearances I do. And that is TJ Scripps. And my Instagram as well, TJ Scripps Writes. I'm looking forward to building that up because this is all new to me. Yeah, but pretty much, yeah, you find Glow in the Dark Books and you'll find me.
Awesome. We've had a wonderful time speaking to the author of Glow in the Dark, A Streak of Light. It's the middle grade debut sci-fi novel from TJ Scripps. Thanks, TJ.
Thank you so much, Jed. And I'll chat to you soon.
Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. My friends, we are going to have a really wonderful and I believe powerful and important conversation right now. Our guest is here today to celebrate a brand new middle grade novel in verse. It's called Octopus Moon. Please welcome to the show, Bobbie Pyron. Bobbie, how are you?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having me on your show.
Delighted to have you on the show. Octopus Moon, what an interesting title. Can you tell us a little bit about the title and also about the book and who we'll meet?
So the book is about a young girl, 10-year-old Pearl, who has always struggled with depression and anxiety, but she's always been able to keep her, the black cloud at bay by running and skateboarding and hanging out with her friends and going to the aquarium where her mother works. And that's always worked for her. But when she starts 5th grade, there's so many changes, and all of a sudden her personal tools don't work anymore, and she becomes overwhelmed with depression and anxiety. In 5th grade, a lot of friendships start changing and shifting, and in many schools, you for the first time you have a locker and you're changing classes, and it's just very overwhelming for her. So she is overwhelmed by her depression and anxiety, and her, the running and so forth doesn't work for her. Eventually, she does start seeing a therapist, and it's her journey towards healing and acceptance of what her mental illness is. The title, one of the things in the book that she says is that the moon is always full, but we can't see it from down here. So even if she is not feeling bright and full, it's still there. That pearl is still there. The octopus piece comes from the aquarium where her mother works. There they have a tank of octopus. she's always really identified with the loggerhead sea turtles because they have these, thick shells that protect their very tender inside. But once she is really experiencing depression, she starts feeling more like the octopus. Octopus have millions of touch receptors on each of their arms. And so there really is nothing between their world and them. And she feels everything, and she feels like she doesn't have that protection anymore. And so it shifts, and she, identifies more with the octopus. So you mash those two together, and we came up with Octopus Moon.
That, as you were mentioning, the octopus and has all these feelings, receptors, and then mentioning with Pearl that she feels everything. That kind of gave me a chill that ran down my spine as I was thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that depression is different for everybody, and that's what I talk about in the author's note. Some people don't feel anything when they're really depressed. Some people feel angry. Some people feel everything. This book came from my experience. I have struggled with depression since I was about Pearl's age. And for me, I feel everything. There is nothing between me and other people's suffering, or, an animal's suffering, or, whatever. And it can be very overwhelming.
I bet. I'd like, if it's okay, to delve in a little bit more about how you experience depression, just because I kind of grew up. I'm almost 100 years old right now, and we didn't talk about it. And if someone was depressed, you thought, oh, they're sad. Well, they'll get over it, to cheer up. And I don't ever remember experience depression. I remember one time I felt, and it was like for 2 seconds, just like overwhelming dread, and it was like, ugh! And thankfully it just went away just as quickly as it came on. And I'm like, I don't ever want to feel that again. That's terrifying. But I'm one of those glass full guys that I'm obnoxiously positive most of the time. And I know that I annoy a lot of people in my life with that. But I want to understand more. Depression, it's more than just feeling sad and feeling blue.
It is. And, again, that's what I'm really trying to show in my book, is that it's not just having the blues. It's not just having a bad day or a couple of bad days. It is just this chronic sense of hopelessness. That I think that is really, to me, what signifies depression from, just, having a bad day, for instance, because you just feel so incredibly hopeless. It steals that from your soul. And if you don't have hope, and you go days and days and days and weeks without hope, it absolutely grinds you down. And I'm like you, when I was a kid, like I said, I think I've probably started experiencing depression and anxiety when I was very young, but, you didn't talk about it. You didn't talk about it in adults, and you certainly didn't talk about it in kids. I mean, it was inconceivable that a child could be depressed. Mm-hmm. But, when I was probably 5 or 6, I woke up my parents in the wee hours of the morning and asked them if, when I died, would everyone else around me die? And that's pretty existential. And so my father said to my mother, "We're in big trouble here." But, the thing when I was growing up was, oh, Bobbie is so sensitive. She's moody, she's shy, she's... there were all these other words for it, but no one talked about depression. So it wasn't until I was into my late 20s that I've got the help that I needed so desperately as a kid.
How did, then you may not be able to answer this, but I'm curious, how did that feel, having all these feelings and not being able to control it and not having anybody who could help you?
I think especially when I was a kid, I sort of buried myself in books. Books were very important to me. My dog was very important to me. I was a very shy kid, and so I didn't have a lot of friends. So my dogs and books were my friends. I like to say that Octopus Moon is the book that my 10-year-old self had, very much needed. As a teen, I was a hot mess because I just didn't have any way of dealing with depression in a healthy way. So it was extremely difficult.
I imagine. I'm also imagining that in some ways Octopus Moon was written for that 10-year-old Bobbie.
It was. This will be my 8th book, and all of my books have a little bit of me, or, a fair amount of me in them, but this is certainly the closest to the real me. And I think, for a lot of years, I didn't want to write about my childhood, and I didn't want to really explore depression. But I started realizing when I did school visits, kids want the truth, and they want to hear these things. I was doing some school visits last year in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the kids would always ask me during the Q&A, well, when's your next book coming out? What's it about? And so I just told them, and I had more kids come up to me afterwards and say, I need to read that book. I can't wait for that book to come out. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I don't have anybody to talk to. So it's very much needed.
I'm imagining even now in some places now that we are talking more about it, that there are kids out there who might go to their parents or even their teachers and say, hey, I think I'm depressed. And I'm imagining a lot of them get well, you'll get over it. It's, you're going to be okay. Don't worry about it. And that is going to end a lot of conversations. That child is not going to come back real soon to get some more help.
That's a really interesting point. When I started writing Octopus Moon, I consulted with a child therapist down in Asheville because I wanted to make sure that, especially for now, because like you, I'm 100 years old, and so things have changed, and I wanted to make sure that I was, getting it right. And she said, it's usually the teachers who tell the parents, I think there's something going on with Bobbie or Susie or whoever. Their work is not up to par. They seem sad. They seem distracted. They notice changes. And so she said very, very often it's the teachers that alert the parents. And I think, parents, for one thing, they're so busy. It's just easy, you're in your day-to-day being so busy to just kind of write it off as, they're just moody today. But also I think parents don't want to acknowledge something like depression or anxiety in their child because they feel like that's an indictment against their parenting. And 99% of the time it isn't. It isn't. I mean, it's that they know that there is a hereditary factor in depression. It tends to run in families. It's squirrely chemistry. It's like diabetes. It's an illness. It's a chronic illness. And I think there's still that stigma out there that mental illness is somehow different from some other kind of chronic illness like diabetes or asthma or something like that.
Well, it's certainly one of those invisible illnesses that you can't see. You break your arm, you can see it. When I tore my quad tendons, and I reached down and touched my leg, and there were no muscles there, and I could touch the femur. I'm like, I couldn't identify what it was. I couldn't say what it was, but I knew there was something really wrong there. But with depression and other mental illnesses, there's just nothing that you can put your finger on.
Right. That's so funny that you say that, because Pearl says to her therapist at one point, it would be so much easier if I had a broken arm, because then people could see what's wrong with me. And, people who are living with a chronic mental illness like depression, they get really, really good at hiding it. Really good. You've got all your adaptations in place. And that can be exhausting, but, it's also, it enables you to go to school. It enables you to go to work. And so it can be very hard to spot.
Yeah. I'm imagining, because of course, reading with your kids, our mission is to help families grow closer through reading, and we encourage families of middle grade kids and teens to continue to read with them or co-read with them and sit down and have discussions about what you're reading. I'm imagining that Octopus Moon would be a great book to start a conversation with your child who may be feeling anxious or depressed without talking directly about them. It's like, let's talk about Pearl and what she's going through. And do you know anybody? Do you ever feel something like this? And I bet you probably wouldn't even have to ask that question. I think it would probably come out organically.
Yeah, I think it would. And that is certainly my hope. The other thing with the book, I always say a good book is a mirror and a window. And so not only would it be a mirror to another child who is experiencing this, but I also hope it will be a window for kids when they read it who don't experience depression but have a good friend who does, or a parent or a grandparent or a sibling, and understand what it feels like for that person to be dealing with depression on a day-to-day basis. I hope that will, especially if the book is used as a read aloud in schools, which a lot of my books are. And I'm so thrilled that teachers at this grade level are still reading aloud to their kids. I just think it's amazing. But hopefully it will start a conversation for kids who are not experiencing this.
Absolutely. Yes, we are big proponents of looking at books as mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And I'm, being an old white guy who had lots of representation of me and my siblings and my cousins in books growing up, I really love the fact that books gave me a chance to look into another culture, look into somebody who lived in a different world. And it's so important. And I think those conversations, again, sitting down and asking your kid, do you know anybody at school that's like this? Not to kind of point a finger and say, watch out for that person, but just to say, well, how can we be more empathetic and more understanding to that person? What could we do that could help make life better for that person?
Right. And that's something, there's an extensive author's note at the end of the book. And that's something that I talk about is, if you have a friend who is struggling with chronic depression, your friendship will be very important, but you cannot fix that person. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be the same person every day, and you can't take that personally. And there's going to be times when your friend doesn't, want to hang out with you, and you can't take that personally, but they need to know that that friendship is there, no matter what. But it is important, I think, especially for kids and in our culture, we're very much a fix-it culture, I think. Mm-hmm. It's hard to just sit with something like depression. Mm-hmm. So, if a person's friend understands that, just my presence, maybe you're watching a movie together or playing a video game together, but just your presence to be with them when they are in not so great a space is very, very important.
Yeah. Why did you choose to write this in verse?
That's a good question. Well, I love novels in verse, first of all. I absolutely love novels in verse. And my book that came out in 2019, Stay, half of it is written in verse. The dogs, switches back and forth from a girl's point of view and a dog's point of view. And the dog's chapters are written in verse, free verse. And I had such a good time doing that. I thought, hey, let's do a whole book this way. and I did, and I just don't think I'll ever do it again. I told my agent, I said, if I ever talk about writing another novel in verse, just shoot me, just shoot me. But I also think that it kind of softens the edges. And it also gets right to the core of things. I tend to be, if you can't tell from this interview, I tend to be a pretty wordy person. And I can go on and on when I'm writing prose, but this really forced me to distill things down to the bone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good thing.
Experiencing novels in verse, old guy, like thrillers, they're fun, and every chapter has a cliffhanger. That's not something we're going to find in a novel in verse. To me, I enjoy them because I can just take that verse, that chapter, and sit on it for a while and just really contemplate it. And I'm imagining, again, going back to the family co-reading this book together, what a great way to kind of experience it. Just take it one chapter or poem or verse at a time and really kind of dive into it. I think I'm always fascinated when I'm with somebody and we're looking at the same thing, experiencing the same thing, but we're looking at it in a completely different way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that happens in families, as you know, and siblings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the verse really lends itself to that experience. So, you stole one of my questions. I was going to ask you if you're going to do this again, and obviously probably not.
It's, when I write a first draft of a book, I try not to think. Mm-hmm. Ray Bradbury said that thinking is the death of creativity. Thinking is fine in a second draft, but I try not to think too much in a first draft. I just want everything to kind of organically pour out. I don't outline, I don't do all that stuff. But writing in verse, I really had to think. And that was difficult for me, but it was a really good thing to learn how to do. And, never say never. I may do another book in verse after I get over this one, but it was very challenging for the way that I typically write.
Yeah. Do we get a chance to hear Pearl kind of telling her story in the book, or is it, do we experience the story through a narrator?
No, this is all from Pearl's point of view. Mm-hmm. So we really do get down deep into her feelings and how she experiences this. I use the metaphor, maybe overuse it too much in the book of water, and water separating you from life. And for me, when I'm experiencing depression, I feel like I'm sitting, like if you're sitting in the bottom of a swimming pool and you look up and you can see the light up there and you can see figures moving around, you can see the life up there, but you're still very separated from it. And depression really does separate you from life.
The interventions, the therapy that you've experienced, does it help?
It does. Now, in full disclosure, so does a cocktail of medications. I don't go into that in the book, but I think therapy and, if it's needed, medication. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this isn't to say that I don't still have days when I get depressed or get very anxious, but I've got a safety net, and I also know that there's hope. It may feel hopeless at the time, but I've pulled myself out of dark places many, 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 many times, and I can do that.
Wonderful. Where can we go to find out more about Octopus Moon, find out more about the other books that you didn't write in verse and felt about, and find out more about you?
You can visit my website. It's very simple. It's bobbiepyron.com. And it's got a lot of information on my books. It has a link. You can email me and ask me questions. One thing that's really cool is on the same day that Octopus Moon comes out, which is March 25th, the audiobook will come out as well, which I'm really excited about because I love audiobooks.
Yeah, me too. That's wonderful. We've had a great time and a very informative time speaking to the author of Octopus Moon. It's a new middle grade novel in verse from our guest, Bobbie Pyron. Bobbie, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, and thank you for what you do.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids. We hope you've enjoyed it so much that you were inspired to leave a review of the podcast wherever you find your favorite podcast. We love the iHeartRadio app. We love Spotify, Good Pods, Apple, wherever you find Reading with Your Kids. Please consider leaving a review. A 5-star review would be most appreciated. We'd also love for you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids. At Reading With Your Kids on Instagram and at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We have a great YouTube channel where you can find all of our Drawing With Your Kids videos and our STEM is Family Fun videos. That channel, it's youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And of course, our website, it's readingwithyourkids.com. You can check out our blog, visit our Reading With Your Kids Certified Great Read Wall of Fame, and use the contact button up at the top of the page to send us a message. We'd love to hear what you love about the show. We need to hear what you think we can be doing better. And we especially want to hear who you would like to hear on a future episode of Reading With Your Kids. And if you are an author of a great children's book, we want to hear from you. There's a button at the top of readingwithyourkids.com. It says, Authors, click here. You can click that button and find out how you can be a guest here on Reading With Your Kids. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of Kidlit fans all around the world about your fantastic children's book. I want to thank the authors who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, TJ Scripps. Glow in the Dark, A Streak of Light is her middle grade debut sci-fi novel. Please be sure to check it out. Also want to thank Bobbie Pyron. Please be sure to check out her middle grade novel in verse, Octopus Moon. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.